I think we've heard, before I get into my line of questioning, we've heard a little bit, a couple of myths, I think, advanced or over the course of this hearing. And I wanted to dispense with them very quickly. First is this idea that education is the solution to a wealth gap. While I appreciate the emphasis on education, and it is something that is incredibly important, we know for a fact that that is not the solution to our wealth gap here in the United States. In fact, there's a Demos study that shows that white high school dropouts in the United States are wealthier on average than Black and Latino college graduates. And if any of my colleagues want to call any of that into question, I'm happy to submit that study to the record. But that's because what wealth in America is largely predicated on is generational wealth, housing, New Deal investments that created redlining policies that prevented Black, Native, Latino Americans from buying into this American dream that was created in part with public policy. And that injustice translated into a wealth gap that is inherited generation by generation. And so we cannot talk about education as a cure to Jim Crow when it's not Black, brown, Native people that need to be educated out of a wealth gap. Policy created this, policy needs to solve it. Now that brings me to a second point where Ms. Gonzalez Brito, earlier in this hearing, you were kind of jumped on the issue of postal banking. And there was a member that asked you, where has this been successful? Where has this been successful? Well, I have an example. How about the United States? Isn't that right, Ms. Gonzalez Brito? The United States had a successful postal banking system for about 50 years, didn't we? Oh, sorry, you're still muted. In fact, we had it until about 1966, correct?
Yeah.
And it was designed to help lower income people, small saving accounts, not people with tens and thousands of dollars at their disposal, but just a place to park your money where you're not going to get knocked with a $25 fee every month, right?
That's right.
In fact, it was so successful that the United States postal banking system, our public option in our postal banking system, took up about 10% of the consumer banking market at its peak. It was so popular among the American people of all parties. Isn't that right, Ms. Gonzalez?
That's right. That's right, Congresswoman.
So I'm happy to submit some of that to the record as well, if my colleagues need a little bit of studying in our history, our rich and beautiful history in postal banking in the United States. But I will move on to my question. I wanted to talk a little bit about how private equity groups are gobbling up our housing supply in the United States. So we can build as much as we want, but when they're gobbled up by the 1%, we still can't afford rent. People still can't buy their home. So I was wondering if you could just explain a little bit in the post-recession how we had people got wiped out in foreclosures, and then these corporate groups, like for example, Invitation Homes, which happens to be the country's largest rental homeowner, scoops up this supply in Black and Latino neighborhoods to translate that wealth gap inherited from redlining and translating it into our market today. So I'm sorry you only have a minute, but that's what we've got.
Is that for me, Congresswoman?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. This is the corporate landlords that we're talking about. This is Wall Street that has gobbled up our homes and now owns our communities and doesn't allow first-time home buyers to come in. And so our good friends at ACRE have put together a great report on this and have put together the amount of money that these companies, these corporations are now amassing to do the same thing during this pandemic. So the numbers look like this. Invitation Homes has put together a joint venture. They've amassed more than $1 billion for a house hunt that they're now going to be embarking on. And they have bought up more than $200 million of homes already per quarter since the pandemic started. So they are on it. And that real estate investment funds have amassed over $142 billion to spend on pandemic distressed real estate. Those are homes, those are small businesses that are family owned and that are going to be gone unless we do something about it. And what we can do is ensure that banks, if something is foreclosed upon, turn it over to community land trust, turn it over to affordable housing developers so that we keep those properties in community owned hands.
Thank you.
Thank you.